Hey everyone, this is Tom, and I thought I would put together kind of a fun video that shows you how to take your eBird data and do some analysis on it. So for our example, I'm going to walk you through how you can take your downloaded eBird data and, for example, I want to know how many species I've seen in each county by month. So I live in Michigan, so that's 83 counties. I want to know how many species I've seen in each county by month. So, for example, how many species do I have in Oakland County for January, or Chippewa County for May, things like that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our downloaded data, we're going to load it into Excel, and we're going to do a whole bunch of data filtering, create pivot tables, stuff like that. So a couple of assumptions before I get started. I'm on the latest version of Excel, and also I'm on a Windows machine. So if you're on a Mac, then I'm going to go through some keyboard combinations that probably are not applicable to the Mac. So if you're on a Mac, you'll just kind of have to figure that part out on yourself. So you do not have to be an Excel guru at all. I will walk you through all of the steps. Some familiarity with Excel is going to be very helpful. Also, obviously, basic just computer skills and how to open files and stuff like that. So to get started, as I mentioned, you're going to have to go out to eBird, and you're going to want to download your most recent eBird data. And the way that you do that is you click on your eBird tab here, and then down here in the bottom left is download my data. This will just take you to a little box here, and then you can hit submit. So I've had pretty good success. I usually get an email that is tied to my eBird account. I probably get an email within sometimes 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes it can be as long as an hour, just kind of depending on how busy the eBird servers are. Once you get your data, or once you get the email, you'll get a link in that email that allows you to go ahead and download your data. So just it's probably going to be downloaded to your download folder if you're on a Windows machine. So you can feel free to just open it from there, or you can save it maybe to another folder on your computer. So once you're done there, and you get that, the data is probably going to come in a zip file. So this icon looks a little different. It looks like this. You can just double click on that, and then on my computer I've already got what's called a comma separated file. That's the format it's going to come into. I've already got Excel associated with that. So I can just double click on this right here, and it's going to open up in Excel. If text files and comma separated files are not already associated with Excel, you may have to go through a separate step to open this. If you double click on this and you don't see the icon, Excel icon here, you double click on this, it may bring up another dialog box that basically says, oh, it's trying to load into Excel. I don't really know, computer doesn't know how to open that. So I'm sorry, but you'll have to sort of work through that part yourself. You could maybe do an open with, like a right click and an open with, something like that. But I'll assume that you can get your data opened up in Excel. I'm going to just go ahead and double click this, and sure enough, it's going to launch Excel. And for me, in the level of data that I have, by default, it's going to look like this. One of the first things that you may want to do is just go ahead and do a file and then a save as, to save it as a Excel workbook. I'm not going to do this at this point. I'm just going to walk through all of the different steps that we need to do to accomplish our objective. All right, so one of the things that we need to do is we need to filter out all of the data that we don't need. This downloaded data is all of your sightings that you have ever entered into eBird. So to start the process of getting rid of all of the data that we don't need, I'm going to first get rid of all of the columns that we don't need, and then we'll address all of the rows of data that we don't need. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and click in this upper left-hand corner of your spreadsheet, and what it does is it highlights the entire sheet. And then in between any of the columns here, you'll notice that the icon turns into a double arrow. I can just double click, and what Excel does is it makes each column as wide as the widest data in that column. All right, now let's think about the columns that we do need. So after thinking about this, I know that I only need to know the common name, the either state province, so common name, state province. I also need to know which county, and of course the date. So I'm going to delete all of those columns that I don't need. There's a couple of ways to delete the columns that you don't need. So with my mouse, I am going to right click, not left click, but right click into column A. All right, I don't need column A. So I'm going to go ahead, right click, and then just hit delete. And I can do that for all of the columns that I don't need. I don't need scientific name. I don't need tax order. All right, so I'm just right clicking and deleting these. I don't need count. All right. Now I do need state province and I need county, but I don't need location ID. So again, I can right click and delete. I don't need location. Right click, delete. Now you may have a whole bunch of columns in a row here that you don't need. I'm going to left click and drag. I don't need latitude and longitude. So once those are highlighted, I right click and delete. Now I do need date, but I don't need any of the rest of these columns. So I'm clicking and dragging across those. I can right click and delete. Okay, I don't need checklist comments. Right click, delete. All right, so now I've got all of the columns that I need and got rid of all of the columns that I don't need. So now I can start focusing on the rows that I don't need. So for me, I'm doing this for Michigan. I only want rows of data that are relevant to Michigan. So in the state province column, I want to get rid of all of the rows that are not Michigan. So I'm going to start doing some Excel features here, and again, I'll walk you through them. I'm going to do something called a filter. So I'm going to go up here to Data, and then I'm going to go to Filter. And what I want to do is I want to filter out everything that's not Michigan, like I said. So once I filter, I've got these drop-down arrows in each of the columns. I'm going to click on that. And for Michigan, it's going to be down here towards the bottom, at least for me. I've got a fair amount of data here. I'm going to find US-MI, and then I'm going to deselect that. So what I'm doing now is I'm selecting everything except Michigan. So what I want to do now is I want to delete all of these other rows, these rows that are not Michigan. Now things get a little tricky here. I want to keep my column headings here. I just want to delete all of these other rows here. Depending on how much data you have, there's a couple of ways to do it. I've got something like 60-some thousand rows in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on row 2, and then I'm going to start doing some keyboard combinations here. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and then I'm going to hit the End button and then my down arrow. So I'm holding down my Shift key, I'm hitting the End button, and then down arrow. So what it's doing is it's going down to the bottom of the data. It selected essentially everything except for my column now. Another combination I want to do, because I want to delete all of these, there's an Excel keyboard combination. I'm going to hold down the control button and I'm going to hit the minus sign. So what Excel is doing is it's deleting all of those rows that are highlighted. All right, so now when it's done, it looks like this. But if I hit my filter button, or basically toggle it off, it's unfiltered now. And so now I have all of my Michigan data here. There's no other data from other states, countries, anything. All right, the next thing I need to do, thinking about our requirement, is that I just want to know which month. So I've got all these dates here, but for each of these dates, I want to know what the month of the sighting was. All right, so Excel provides a formula where I can do something cool like this. I can just type in an equal sign and then put in the month function, the formula. And then I just want to get the month from the date. So I can just click on that right there. I close my parenthesis and Excel returns the month from this date. So again, thinking about our end product, I want to count up all of the species that I've seen by month, not specific day, but just by month. All right, so I'm going to do another little kind of trick of the trade here. I'm going to go over here back to my date column. I'm going to hit my end key and then my down arrow. What that does is it takes me to the last row that has any data in here. I'm just going to put in a dummy value here, just like X for right now. And I'll explain why in a moment. All right, I'm going to hit Control plus the home, and that always takes me back up to the upper left part of my spreadsheet. What I want to do now is I want to copy this formula from where it's at all the way down. So I'm going to do a Control C for copy. That's sort of the universal Windows copy. I'm going to come down here because I want to start copying it from here all the way down to where my X is. So I'm going to press my Shift, hit the end button, and down arrow again. And you can see it stopped down at that X. If I didn't have that X there, it would have gone all the way down to the bottom of my spreadsheet. At this point, I can just press Enter, and Excel has copied that formula all the way down through my spreadsheet into that column. All right, we're making some progress here. So the next thing I want to do is there's some additional rows in here that I don't want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter out those rows I don't want. All right. So I'm going to come back here, and if I'm still on my data tab, if not, just click on it and click the filter again. I want to filter out some more data. And if I hit this down arrow in my common name column, right, it shows everything. By default, everything is selected. In this little search box here, I'm going to type in SP dot. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to get rid of all of my SPAs, as we like to call them. And so here's a whole bunch of sightings that I've entered into eBird that are just accipiter SPA or, colidris SPA. Right? I want to get rid of all those. I don't want to include those in my counts. So I just typed in SP dot, and then it selected all of the SPAs, and I hit OK. Well, again, I want to get rid of these. So I can either click and drag down to the bottom of my data, or I could use that end down arrow. But there's not so much here now anymore that I can't just click and drag and highlight all of that. So I'm going to do my keyboard combination here of Control minus sign, and it's deleting all of that stuff that was highlighted there. So I didn't highlight my row 1 because that's my column headings. Right? So if I go back to unfilter this now, oh cool, all of my SPAs are gone. Now I might want to get rid of some other stuff, so let me show you other stuff you might want to get rid of. I'm going to go back and toggle my filter back on. I'm going to go here, do my down arrow. It, again, by default, selects everything. But notice like alder, willow, flycatcher, right? I might want to put in a slash here. It's going to select all of those items that are not specific. Like I recorded something, couldn't tell if it was a greater or lesser yellow leg. So I did the slash here when I reported my eBird data. Okay. Well, you don't want to count those in your totals here, so I want to get rid of those as well. Right. So I'm going to hit OK here, and sure enough, it returns all of those rows. Again, I don't want to get rid of my column headings, so I'm going to click at that first one below the column heading. I'm just clicking and dragging down, and when I get to the bottom of my data, everything's highlighted. I'm going to do my control minus sign again, and they're all gone. Okay. I probably want to get rid of things like domestic. So like I've got a couple of settings in here of domestic mallard. Right. So they're both highlighted. I can do my control minus sign to delete those. One other thing that you might want to be conscious of, I'm going to put in a left parent here, parentheses, and you're going to get all of these like subspecies here. I'm going to let you do with those whatever you want to do, but like Iceland gall can be problematic. You may have reported something as a Thayer's or Kumlians. You may not want to count those because they're just subspecies. So you might want to come out to your rows in your data and either, like rock pigeon, feral pigeon is probably okay, but some of the other data you either might want to change so that it's just a straight Iceland gall or delete those. You can use the steps that I've been going through to address those. All right, at this point, I'm going to let you address those. I'm going to leave them in there for the rest of this walkthrough here. All right, so I'm gonna unfilter my data. So I no longer have any filtered data. All my data is showing. I'm going to use my control home button to get back up to cell A1. And there is one more big thing that we want to do here, and that is to get rid of some duplicates. What I mean by duplicates, again, thinking about what we want to accomplish, I want to know how many species I've seen per month by each county. So here's a good example of what I'm talking about. Like right here in Wayne County, I've seen snow goose on 2 different occasions in November. Well, I don't want to count both of those. I just want the single instance or a single count of how many species I've seen in a county for a month. So I want to get rid of duplicates like this. And this was the whole reason of why we put, or the biggest reason we put in the month column here. Okay. So how do I get rid of those duplicates? Well, what I want to do is go back to my data, if you're not already on there. And then there's this built-in feature here says remove duplicates. It's this icon right here. It's going to prompt me for, like, what do you want to remove duplicates, based on what, all right? Well, I want to make sure that I want to delete duplicates where it's the same common name, same county, and same month. We did our month here in column E. So I don't want to worry about the date or the state province. I want to remove duplicates where the same name, same species, same county, and same month. Once I do that, I'll hit OK, and Excel deleted a whole bunch of rows, like 2/3 of my rows. Not surprisingly, because how many times have I recorded starling in my home county in the same month? Probably quite a bit. All right. At this point, we finally have the data that we want to analyze for our requirement anyhow. Okay, so before we go any further, let's go ahead and make sure we give this month column, and I probably should have done this earlier, but just go ahead and put a label in here, a column heading for us called month. Now the next thing that we're going to do is create a pivot table. If you've played around at Excel, I know a lot of people start hearing about pivot tables and they're like, ooh, that sounds too techy for me. They're actually pretty cool and pretty easy to use. So here's what we do. Now that we've got all of our good data, we just go to Insert, and then we're going to insert a pivot table. Now, Excel is smart enough to guess what data that you want to include in your pivot table. And you kind of see this border around your data. Don't get caught up in all of these different options. You can just go ahead and say OK. So what Excel has done is it inserted a new tab here. All right, took my data and inserted a new tab. And it provided this dialog box. Now, here's what we want to do. We want to drag this months field. We're going to click and we're going to drag it down into the rows. So we're sort of building this table. And now I have each of my months here. 1 is obviously January, 2 is February, and so on. The next thing I want to do is I want to drag the county down to the columns area. So I'm going to click and drag down into the columns area. And sure enough, my counties are showing up along my columns here. And then lastly, I want to click and drag common name down into this sum values. So pretty neat. What Excel just did is it took my data and it built this table. And so here I have all of the sightings that I have seen, or the number of species that I've seen in Elkona for January. I've got the number of species I've seen in Aranac County for May, all right, 120. So it just it filled in all of these tables with my raw data based on this pivot table that I created. So just to wrap this up, there's some other cool things you might want to do just to sort of take this a step further. You might want to do something like putting in another formula here to say something like, I want to count how many of these that I have that are greater than 50 species. So we can do something like this. We can type in the formula count if, and then I need to put in a left parenthesis, and then I need to tell it what range to look through. And so let's say I just wanted to do this for Elkona. I can click and drag to define my range. I now need to put in a comma, and then I'm going to put in quotes my criteria. So I'm going to do something like quote greater than 50, close that quote, and then close my parenthesis. What I've just done is Excel is now telling me how many counts do I have of greater than 50 in this range. Now I might want to copy this across for all of my counties. So I'm going to do a Control-C to copy it. And then I'm going to go over one row just using my right arrow. I'm now holding down my Shift button, and I'm just going all the way across here. 83 rows in Michigan. So I'm just going to keep going until I get to my last one. Once I'm there, just hit Enter. So I just copied that formula all the way across. I might do one more thing here, and then we'll wrap this up. I want to know that same thing for my whole data set here. So I want to know how many species I've seen per county per month where it's greater than 50. So I can do something like count if left parenthesis. And I can tell you the range. If you're in Michigan, it's going to be B5 colon CF16. That's the range I want to use. That's all of my data here. Okay. And then just to finish this formula, again in quotes, I'm going to put greater than or equal to 50, close quote, close parenthesis. And I have 192 instances where I have more than 50 species per county for a particular month. So this one got included, this one got included, anything greater than 50. You'll notice that when you click out of your data set that the pivot table created, your dialog box here goes away. You can just click back into it to have that show up again if you need to. All right, so that concludes this tutorial. Hopefully you got something out of it, maybe some cool new Excel features. If I get any amount of positive feedback on this, I might do another couple more just for maybe other requirements that you that you might have. So hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day and good birding.